morning. If people could take their seats, we're getting ready to start the first panel. Thank you. So as a hush comes across the room, I think it's a good moment to begin. Firstly, thank you so much for participating in day 2 of this 2019 Tunisia Investment Forum, really showcasing the next opportunity for Tunisia. It's an absolute pleasure to start the day by moderating this panel. My name is Andrew Collingwood. I'm a director at a company called Expectation State. I'm absolutely thrilled to have members of the panel join me on stage, whom I'll introduce, and then we'll just set the scene for this panel. It's fantastic to have Madison from the US Chamber of Commerce, to have His Excellency, the Minister of Industry, SMEs and Energy, Mr. Salim Feriani, to have Nathalie Clemence from the European Investment Bank, to have Jerome Dean from Yazaki, and to have Alia El Hada from Opalia. So it's fantastic to start the day with such a wonderful panel of speakers. As juice is being served, as is only appropriate for the beginning of a panel, I think it's good just to reflect a little bit on what we heard from yesterday. It was a fantastic opportunity to have a wonderful audience hear an extremely positive message from the Tunisian government and for the businesses that participated. And certainly for me, what I took away was a real message of openness to private sector investment, an opportunity to be able to really partner with the private sector for greater levels of investment, and a real willingness to work alongside the private sector to continue to generate the levels of investment that are so important for Tunisia as it goes through this journey. This panel is really about getting into a deeper understanding of the successes that Tunisia has seen through the voices of investors, through the voices of institutions like EIB, and giving the opportunity for the government to be able to explain how this investment is being supported. So I'd like to begin by hearing from Jerome at Yazaki, because this is a very compelling story of investment, a fantastic story of how business has really committed to Tunisia, and the return on investment that can be realized through the opportunities that Tunisia has to offer. So, Jerome, perhaps you could start us off by explaining Yazaki's history and how that investment has been realized.
Okay. Test. It works. So, thank you very much, Andrew, for the introduction. My name is Jeroen Deen. I'm responsible as country head of Tunisia. This means that I'm responsible for the industrial and productivity strategy for developing our business in Tunisia. But before I go into our success story in Tunisia, I would like to tell a little bit about our company, Yazaki. Yazaki is a wire harness manufacturer. It's a privately owned company coming from Japan. We now have the 4th generation of the family working in leadership areas in the company. And this is driving our DNA, because we have one big motto, and that is a cooperation in step with the world, and a cooperation needed by society. And that is driving a lot of our strategies. We are based on long-term vision, and we share that vision with in all of the operations with all of the people in the world. And just to let you know the size of the company, today we employ more than 300,000 people worldwide. And they are working in manufacturing, design, development, sales, project management. So we are covering a lot of different expertise within our function. Besides, we are working as wire harness manufacturer. We are the #1 world leader in wire harness manufacturing. And next to that, we also develop electronics, components, and instrumentation. So this is a complete approach to be able to supply deep vertical content to our wire harnesses, but also to be able to develop together with our customers the electrical and electronic architecture for the future of automotive, which is ongoing a major transformation, and we need to constantly adapt to this. So now coming back to the question of Andrew, so we have 2 production sites in Tunisia. One is here in close to Tunis, Bizerte, which we bought from another company in 2008, but it has been existing since 2001. So we have a long history of investment in the Tunis area. And the second major investment that we have is in Gafsa, which is in the middle of the country. It's one of those zones where we contribute major development to a structural development zone. So we are proud to do that. We started our investment in 2008 in Gafsa. So we have been ongoing through a long history with more than 10 years of history and industrial activity in Gafsa. We have been going through good times, and we have been going through bad times and difficult times and challenging times. And despite the fact that our activity was heavily disrupted in 2011, we have committed ourselves to maintain the workforce locally there, because we were contributing so much to the society there, and we wanted to provide also further stability to the region. So this is, like I said, it's really engraved in the DNA of our company. I would like to mention that this has meant a serious investment for Yazaki in terms of structural strategy, and that now we are happy to see that the dynamic activity of Tunisia is picking up. When I go to the hotel in Gafsa, there are now again tourists coming there, so we see that there's much more activity coming. And I think this is important to highlight that Tunisia and the government is providing stability to Tunisia, but also to the region. And I think this is also something which is important, because the neighbors, they also have a major role to play for the stability of other areas. And for us, this plays a role. And now what we're doing is we are undertaking massive investment activity in Tunisia. So we are extending our factory here in Bizerte, where we're launching major programs as we speak. We are launching massive investments in new projects in Gafsa, and in 2 years' time we will be all up and running at full capacity with those plants. Today we are employing 4,000 employees, and in 2 years' time there will be 3,000 more. And we are currently also investigating for further investment opportunities, because like I said, it's my responsibility to develop also country, Tunisia, from its industrial perspective, and what can we do further to develop a business. And it's important because we are here close to Europe. So we're delivering our customers in Italy, but we're also supplying goods to customers all over Europe, to the automotive assembly plants. And this is where we are today. And we are really looking forward to continue working with the team. So we employ entire Tunisian teams. So we are really relying heavily on the excellent education. Besides, we are also developing the people internally from our side. So we have a licensing system. We give the opportunity for global projects to our teams. We're sending people to other areas to support. So this is the introduction or my and our experience with Tunisia, and we are glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Jeroen. And as I said, I think a wonderful way to be able to start the panel with such a positive experience from a company that has really begun to see and realize that investment, being able to deliver jobs, but also deliver those jobs in areas of the country that are particularly important to develop. I should have began the panel by saying that for the majority of the time, the panel will be in English. But in order to make sure that we share the fullness of panelists' experience, Alia is going to speak in French. So for those that need translation from French to English, please do make sure that you turn your headsets on, which gives me the opportunity to ask Alia to share your experience of what it means to be a Tunisian business that has received investment from overseas and the characteristics of Tunisia that have really allowed you to grow your business and realize greater potential.
Alia Hedda, donc co-founder and general manager of Opalia Recordati. Donc Opalia Recordati, c'est une industrie pharmaceutique qui est le premier génériqueur en Tunisie D'accord. Allô? Oui, ça marche, très bien. Donc aujourd'hui, nous sommes dans une industrie de pointe très sophistiquée qu'est l'industrie pharmaceutique. Nous avons été créés en janvier 88. Et nous avons commencé avec une petite unité de fabrication de médicaments génériques qui était destinée essentiellement à des médicaments de grande qualité aux patients les plus démunis. Donc déjà, nous étions à cette époque au service des patients. C'était une société mixte tuniso-italienne. Nous avons eu un partenaire italien. Et à partir de là, cette industrie à continuer à investir dans la science, la connaissance et le savoir. Pourquoi la Tunisie est réellement un endroit très intéressant? Pour deux raisons essentielles. Avant tout, le capital humain en Tunisie permet, comme on dit, un growth très, très, très important parce qu'il existe des personnes de grande culture, avec une excellente formation, avec un esprit très ouvert. Et donc, aujourd'hui, le capital humain dans les grandes industries de pointe, la Tunisie is the place to be. La Tunisie possède un capital humain qui a une culture mixte, orientale, occidentale, africaine. Et donc, cette ouverture d'esprit permet aux entreprises d'avoir des centres d'excellence, des centres d'innovation, des centres de créativité et permet réellement un développement très, très, très important pour les entreprises qui investissent en Tunisie. La deuxième raison pour laquelle il est réellement très, très intéressant d'investir en Tunisie pour les entreprises de pointe et de technologie, c'est que nous sommes une réelle plateforme, la grande porte de l'Occident, de la Méditerranée, de l'Afrique, du Moyen-Orient. Cet endroit est réellement absolument exceptionnel pour les investissements parce qu'il permet d'être aux portes de ces trois grandes régions et permet aussi d'avoir des centres d'exportation à partir de la Tunisie qui sont très, très développés. Évidemment, ce qui est aussi très intéressant en Tunisie pour pouvoir investir, c'est que cette ouverture vers la Méditerranée est une grande porte ouverte entre l'Orient et l'Occident. Et cela permet aux entreprises de pouvoir réellement se développer sur cette place de la Méditerranée. C'est pour moi très important de savoir aussi que la Tunisie a la possibilité de pouvoir donner à tous les entrepreneurs un développement particulièrement intéressant parce qu'elle est aussi un centre de grande recherche et développement pour les industries de pointe. Pour Opalia, la Recordati, qui est une multinationale italienne dans l'industrie pharmaceutique, en 2000, je ne retrouve pas la date, 2013, a racheté 90% d'Opalia, et la Recordati aujourd'hui, depuis 2013 jusqu'à maintenant, a fait un excellent growth en Tunisie, avec aussi bien en chiffre d'affaires qu'en productivité, qu'en rentabilité, et ça lui a permis aussi d'avoir des exports vers l'Afrique et vers la région du MENA. Donc notre expérience ces 5 dernières années démontre bien que la Tunisie est vraiment l'endroit où il faut investir pour pouvoir vraiment développer son business vers l'Afrique et les pays du Moyen-Orient. Voilà.
Thank you so much. I think one of the themes that comes out from both of your early interventions is the real opportunity for Tunisia to act as this gateway market, to offer this door between 3 different regions, between Europe, between sub-Saharan Africa, and between the wider North Africa and Middle East region. Jeroen, I know that you're really expanding your business in Tunisia in order to service one of those markets, in particular the European market. So I wonder how central that is in your decision-making when you're thinking about increasing your investment in Tunisia. What does that gateway offer your business?
So what does it offer? So we heard from Alia that we have a very high-tech industry. At the same time, we also have workforce in the other areas of Tunisia, which are looking for employment. So we use these resources to build up sophisticated industrial products. And that is, it's always a challenge because coming from a rural area and agricultural background, we now have to start educating them to work on sophisticated industrial products, to man machines. So we're working together with the local government to do training programs and to educate them, and then to license them to take on ever more challenging tasks. So this is the one thing that Tunisia offers to us. And besides, already mentioned, it's the proximity to Europe. So from Tunisia, we are very close to Italy, and from there we are also very close to the Eastern Europe markets. So we have many European and Japanese, Korean manufacturers of cars in Eastern Europe. So we need to supply goods to those regions, and we are faced with very complicated situation in Eastern Europe, where there is really a labor drain. So we see the population reducing. So that's why we also look out for further industrial progress in Tunisia, because here there is a workforce availability which is for us very important, and we need also to have stability.
Thanks very much. And I think really what, again, both of these examples tell us is that Tunisia absolutely has the characteristics to be able to generate more opportunities for investment, whether it's taking low-skilled jobs and developing them through business to turn those jobs into higher-skilled jobs and offer greater opportunities that really respond to the workforce of tomorrow, not just of today, and providing that for businesses to be able to continue to invest long-term in Tunisia, combining that with that access to markets that you both talked about, and being able to compete with other growing markets, whether it's in Eastern Europe or elsewhere. Placing Tunisia firmly within that global competition is obviously so important. I'd really like to take the opportunity now to turn to the Minister to get your view on how, as the mic goes down the line, to get your view on how the government has been supporting the types of growth and investment that both of these businesses are experiencing, and what more Tunisia can do to be able to promote greater levels. So really, really looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to those who are visiting Tunisia. Welcome to Tunisia. Enjoy Tunisia and invest in Tunisia. I think one of the main things I've heard this morning is that Tunisia is the place to be. So we are all in Tunisia today. I'd like to start by putting things into the right context also, because this forum is mainly addressed to investors, Tunisia Investment Forum, particularly foreign investors, but local investors are also very important. We need investments from local and international investors. And it's important to put things into context, particularly for those who don't know enough about Tunisia, in the sense that if you go back about 30 years ago, 50%, 50, of our exports used to be oil revenues. Only 30 years ago, we used to be heavily reliant on oil as our major export revenue. Today, 90%, 90, of our exports are manufacturing industry. So we've come a long way to diversify our economy, and that's a significantly positive development that people need to know about. And when we talk about manufacturing industry, obviously in the 70s, it started with textile and clothing and others, but today, half of those exports are really auto components, aeronautics, high-level technology type of stuff. You've heard Yazaki here is the best example. I didn't pitch him. He spoke for his firm, so it's all genuine. Same thing for Opalia, the pharmaceuticals industry. So there's a very well diversified industrial sector, which is the main engine of growth for our economy. One more thing, there is a big perception versus reality gap for Tunisia. And this is why it's very important for people to go and visit, kick the tires on the ground to see for themselves. And the reality is definitely far better than the perception. Perception usually that you get from the internet, from Googling or looking at the media is not reflective of the positive, more positive reality here on the ground. And that's why it's important, as I said, to realize that Tunisia is an industrial country before anything else. Obviously, tourism is important, agriculture is important, services are important, but Tunisia is definitely driven first and foremost by the industrial sector, and that's been going on for some time. And we've heard from the industrial sector today. Yesterday, we've heard success stories on the industrial side of things. Now, going forward, it's important to continue to build on this, and the SME sector is crucial. So over 90% of our industrial sector are SMEs. So again, we're not reliant on a handful of big groups to drive the economy. And this is also an important thing to realize, that it's a very well diversified industrial sector. And it's a mix between local entrepreneurs, but also international companies who have come in and trusted Tunisia. Now, there are major areas of focus for us as a government, as a country, to take Tunisia to the next level, because the last 8 years have had their own challenges. We need to overcome them. Obviously, security is important, and having a record year for tourism last year and this year is, I think, a strong vote of confidence in the security of the country, and we thank everyone who has contributed towards that. Social and political stability are important, but as President Clinton said at one point in time, it's the economy, stupid, and therefore we need to focus on the economy. So key areas of focus are investment, and exports. These are the key driving engines for our economy, and that leads to job creation. It also leads ultimately to what we all aim for. It's inclusive, fair, sustainable prosperity and social and economic development, which requires, again, some some key priorities, which for us, again, as a country and as a government, there are 3 of them. Entrepreneurship, again, I have with me here, I brought this magazine called Le Manager. This is the manager of the year, a lady, a young lady, 30 years old, and the owner who runs this magazine is a woman, so we talk about women driving a major part of our economy. So entrepreneurship is a key thing for us. Number 2 is digitalization of the economy to gain on productivity, and renewable energy. It's another also major focus for us for the future, for the next 10, 20 years. Renewable energy is another area we're focusing on. Now, how do we also help people like Yazaki and all these industrial firms already here, but also those who are coming? We need to be focusing more on the competitiveness of our country. So a lot of programs. There's no way I can do it in 2 minutes, but I can assure you that as the Ministry of Industry and SMEs, and we have not just the manufacturing industry portfolio, but also the energy and mines and renewable energy portfolios. There's a number of initiatives, but also at the government level, it's teamwork. So obviously we have the Ministry of International Cooperation and Development that has also a number of initiatives, but other ministries also. So it's teamwork. So working on the competitiveness, a number of programs for that. Boosting the priority sectors. Again, we can't be the best at everything. So we need to know where we're good at, where we're best at to compete. If we're exporting, that means that we're competing with the rest of the world. So key priority sectors, I think we've mentioned them: auto components, aeronautics, electronics, pharmaceuticals industry, textile and clothing, agribusiness. But we don't want to exclude the rest. There are other areas that are also with big potential. Investing in infrastructure, not just roads, but also industrial and technological infrastructure, just like technoparks. The one in Bizerte, for example, is another area that we need to talk about. So we have industrial zones that need to be state-of-the-art industrial zones. We are continuing to invest in those. Focusing on SMEs, once again, a number of programs to boost SMEs, including financing. So we're working on, aside from the Startup Act, which we should highlight, but we're working on the crowdfunding law. Crowdfunding and financing of SMEs is an important thing to do, because we can't count just on the banking sector, which accounts for over 90% of the financing of the economy. We must diversify the sources of financing. And then, last but not least, just exactly what we're doing today, promoting Tunisia, working on the image. Image is everything, and we need to work on that image. We need to be proactive about the image of Tunisia by doing events like these, but also going on the ground, because, as I said, Tunisia must be promoted as this industrial and technological hub in the middle of roughly 2.5 billion people. Proximity is very important to the markets in Europe, but also to Africa, 1.2 billion people. And all of this, I think, sums it up in terms of what are the key attractions for Tunisia. One of them is location. It's no coincidence that the Roman Empire fought Carthage a long time ago. It's because of this strategic location, but also the human capital that we have. Women, youth, but also well-educated and skilled labor force everywhere, for that sake. Because, you've heard about GAFSA. Not everyone knows about GAFSA. Not everyone knows that you can have, it's all known about phosphates and mining, but there's also technology that can be done in GAFSA, and that's also something we are working on as a government, is reducing the gap between the haves and have-nots on the coasts by giving incentives, fiscal and others, to the inland areas of the country. So that's one of the things I could say. I have a lot more to say, but I think that's what I wanted to mention as a start, because you're giving me then the opportunity to have concluding remarks, right?
Thanks very much, Minister. I think everybody is definitely thinking that they're going to invest just off the back of the success that you talk about. And I think it's really important that the government speaks with such confidence, but also with such honesty about what some of the challenges are. And I think being able to demonstrate that there is a journey that Tunisia is on. But just in your opening remarks, Minister, so much to take for the opportunity that Tunisia offers, and that ambition to do more.
Give me half an hour, I'll pitch Tunisia.
Next time, I'm sure we'll be able to have much longer, but to make sure that we do hear from other members of the panel, to change the point of discussion a little. Madison, you're obviously representing the US Chamber, and I think the US, in my experience over the past 6 months or so, is a market that shows great potential, for investment in Tunisia, but also paints a realism for Tunisia of the amount of effort required to be able to attract new investment. So it would be wonderful to hear about what your experience has been as a chamber for promoting Tunisia to US investors, what US investors want to see from a country like Tunisia, and how that fits with both what the minister has said, but also what other panelists have said in terms of their experience and how we can use that to really drive greater levels of investment. I've also stolen your mic, so I'm glad that you've got one to use there.
Hello. Oh, I think I'm on. Well, good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here on such an esteemed panel this morning. So, as Andrew mentioned, my name is Madison Aboud. I'm here with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And just by way of background, the U.S. Chamber is a business federation. We have about 500 employees back in Washington, D.C., and networks of local chambers of commerce throughout the United States, and also American chambers across the world. We have an American chamber here who's doing kind of the good work on the ground in Tunisia to help support the U.S. businesses that are here and help to support new entrants into the Tunisian market. So I'm glad to be here and kind of represent the U.S. voice on the panel this morning. I guess just by way of background, the U.S. Chamber has region-specific teams that we work with to look for new investments for our businesses and to help support their business endeavors throughout the world. So I sit within the U.S. Africa Business Center, which looks at the continent of Africa in a very forward-leaning manner and helps to support companies who are currently in Africa and those who are considering market endeavors onto the continent. And so really what makes Tunisia kind of a standout in that region are a couple of factors for us. And these are things that we talk to our companies about on a daily, weekly basis. So one of those factors that was talked a lot about already on this panel is the skilled workforce. Presents a really great opportunity for our companies to be able to kind of hit the ground running when they enter into the Tunisian market. The geolocation that was talked about before, the potential of Tunisia being really a gateway into Africa, as a lot of our companies are thinking about larger African ambitions. And really the good relations with its neighbors is something that is really unique to Tunisia and something that we think serves the country very well. So really we see a lot of potential in the market. We see a lot of current opportunities and we see a lot of future opportunities. In fact, just last week, I took part in a conversation that our government had with the Tunisian government around areas of opportunity that they both had been hearing from investors that the U.S. could play a really forward-leaning role in. So manufacturing is advanced manufacturing, as we've heard on this panel, the U.S. And our companies want to get more involved in construction, in the renewable energy. And of course, we have a lot of companies who are already here and already quite successful in sectors like defense and healthcare, so on and so forth. So we're really pleased. I mean, one of the things that we look at and we see a lot of kind of potential in is the Ease of Doing Business Index, which of course Tunisia continues to rise up year after year. The Chamber actually has its own index that we use to advise our U.S. companies as they're kind of weighing in their minds where their next investment opportunity might be on the African continent. And we call that the Investor Confidence Indicator for Africa. And it's an indicator that we compile off of pre-existing indexes. There's about 12 indexes that our companies monitor quite closely. So we compile those together, we weigh the scores evenly, and we come up with a ranking list comparing African nations to African nations from 1 to 54. And Tunisia last year ranked within the top 10, which is a really great indication for our companies. It was also the top market in all of North Africa, which is something, again, our companies look to and see a lot of promise in. And we can attribute that to a lot of factors that the minister has talked about earlier, about the new investment law that came onto the books, new regulations to help support renewable companies and others. And we're looking forward to other factors like the one-stop shop. I know that the Investment Promotion Agency is putting forward the digital economy, new incentives that you were speaking to earlier as well. In terms of challenges, I mean, I think that we've talked a lot about how the country is still in a growth pattern, and a lot of these things will come along the way. But I think one of the things that our companies are looking for as they're considering Tunisia as this potential hub and gateway into the rest of Africa will be the kind of speed and the logistical capacity of getting goods in and out of the country. I think we live in a world now where labor capability is important, but also how quickly we can bring products to market is something our companies are thinking a lot about. So increasing the capacity of the seaports, the airports, and digital trade is, of course, a factor in that as well. If our companies can't get their data across borders, it's something that really hinders their ability to improve their products and continue to innovate in the market. I think IP is something that our companies think a lot about, and I know the government has put in place a lot of regulations to support companies' IP concerns. It's something they'll continue to think about. But I think the number one kind of, not concern, I guess, more so just hindrance for U.S. companies in the market is what the minister talked about earlier, which is the marketing. I think that the companies who have been to Tunisia, who are here in Tunisia, have been wildly successful and continue to kind of wave the flag when they come back to the U.S. about the opportunities and the successes that they've had in the market. And so what we hope to continue to do as the U.S. Chamber, along with partners like AmCham, with our friends at CIPE, who I see in the audience today, the Center for International Private Enterprise, is to continue to talk about Tunisia and the opportunities that it presents back at home in the U.S.
Thanks so much, Madison. And I think it's really important, actually, just in the composition of this panel, that we're reflecting different and new voices when it comes to Tunisia, to give different perspectives. And I think those kind of real movements towards embracing new technologies with the regulation that needs to support it is so important in a globally competitive race for investment, which is a lovely opportunity to be able to hear from you, Natalie, because I think in your position at the European Investment Bank, you're obviously seeing Tunisia in the context of the region, and are seeing the opportunities that we've heard about and discussed already on the panel, but also within that context of neighborhood and then global competition, you're seeing the areas that really we in Tunisia need to move quickly on. So it'd be really interesting to hear your opinions on where Tunisia sits from the European Investment Bank's perspective and what Tunisia can do more of to rise up more of those lists that all the panelists have talked about.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Esteemed panel members, Minister, good morning, everybody. So my name is Nathalie Clémence. I'm heading the private sector branch of European Investment Bank in the EU neighboring region, spanning from Morocco up to Ukraine. So I'm here to witness my experience in the neighboring region and also to bring the global picture and to also experience where I see Tunisia standing. So before rolling out my presentation, I would like to present one metric. One metric is 40 years. 40 years of EIB presence in the country, no disruption all the way through. And this is a metric that is coming back all the way through this investment forum. I've come across many industrial companies, investors that have been here for long periods, no disruption. And I think it's a metric that characterizes the Tunisia, is that it's been a haven for investment for long. And with no disruption, that is something that I think is a marker of Tunisia in the region. As far as EIB is concerned, yes, 40 years, 5 billion euro of portfolio, a live portfolio, among which 2 billion already engaged in the last 5 years. And more important, it's not only signed commitment, but it's also disbursed commitment, showing the efficiency of the administration to process with the contract, the financing contracts that EIB is signing with the administration. So EIB has been very active for the 40 years in the infrastructure, that's the main marker, but more recently we are really expanding towards private sector with dedicated team to finance directly investors. And we also having support for small ventures from microfinance to SME towards foreign direct investment. So EIB in the neighboring is very active, supporting its European companies, investing in the region, but also supporting local companies in order for them to accelerate their investment plans, and also bringing the transformational aspects that allow those ventures to scale up the value chain. So as far as the bigger picture is concerned, I've witnessed since the Arab Spring a race to visibility in the region. It's obvious, you have all Euro money conferences, investment forums, and so on. It's a race to visibility. I think in this race to visibility, it's important that Tunisia is standing out. Why? Because Tunisia, it doesn't need to have, well, they don't need to stand up as a new haven for investment. It's something that has been ongoing for long already. And Tunisia is standing out on which aspects? The high level of education. I've come across many companies, including foreign direct investment, where high managers, highly placed managers are from the country. That is also a marker of Tunisia that may not exist elsewhere. The presence of a strong middle class, because when we talk about growth, it's not only export growth, but also growth in the country to sell products to a middle class that is eager to get quality products. And of course, as already has been said, the strategic geographical positioning close to Europe, but also as an echo to the Middle East. I think Tunisia has a unique geographical place to play a role of translator between Europe, Africa, and other places in the world. So, when we are talking about no race to the bottom, I think all those elements conclude in favor of Tunisia, not necessarily entering in this race to visibility through the bottom. I think Tunisia should keep up with its competitive edge, and I think one of the added value of the policy makers that I've seen here are really pro-business with in many circumstances, former experience in the private sector and abroad. I think the vision is to take into account the peculiarities of the country. For instance, attracting foreign direct investment, sure. In the manufacturing sector, sure, but with an innovation component, because it's absolutely the business, the environment at the moment and the quality of the workforce is really in favor of bringing innovation together, the investment. We've already seen in pharmaceutical, automotive. It's not only manufacturing, it's also innovation together with the investment. The digital as well, that is something that is a marker of Tunisia. I've come across two companies in the digital, one big player, a smaller player, and guess what? Those companies are acquiring other ventures in Europe. This is also a marker from Tunisia, not necessarily investments coming to the country, but also local players able to grow through acquisition in Europe and other markets in the world. So, but this digital dimension is very important because it diffuses in all businesses, in manufacturing, in tourism, in automotive, in pharmaceutical. So that is something that is very important. And the European Investment Bank now is very has put together a package in order to support this digital revolution in the EU neighboring region. And this is something that we think Tunisia should keep up with its competitive edge. One aspect that was also that we came across is also, of course, the conduciveness of the business environment. At the moment, Tunisia is ranking good, but I think there is a high momentum now to make a lot of efforts in the administration and for policymakers to accelerate this improvement, because this is something that is important for foreign direct investors, but also for those ventures in the country that want to invest abroad. And in very practical terms, I'm witnessing some local companies that are not able to expand that much because of regulatory environment that is not really conducive for their expansion abroad. So all in all, I think when I'm comparing with the other peer countries in the region, Tunisia is definitely standing out. It has to keep up with its competitive edge, and I think I trust the policymakers have a good understanding of this advantage, and they will have the vision to develop the country towards more growth and more expansion in the global race of the economy. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Natalie. And I think, as we expected, a really balanced intervention from EIB, drawing out some of the things that have been spoken about by business leaders, by Madison and by the Minister around those competitive advantages, but also the need to really accelerate that and to really make sure that Tunisia is placing itself ahead of the rest in the region, and the European neighborhood as well, I think, is something that comes across loud and clear. Before we go to the Minister for final remarks, I was wondering if we could just get very, very short interventions from Yazaki and Alia. Just if there's, given that the Minister is going to be closing, and given Natalie's intervention about the need to accelerate, what are the key things that really the government needs to focus on in order to continue to allow your businesses to grow? So I think just very shortly, 30 seconds, 1 minute, the message to the Minister before he concludes.
En deux mots, préparons le futur, rêvons ensemble, parce que la Tunisie est la place du futur, la place de demain, parce que nous avons une superbe nouvelle génération. The next generation is a very, very high potential in Tunisia, et le futur de la Tunisie sera particulièrement brillant avec sa nouvelle génération. Voilà les deux mots que j'ai à dire.
Okay, from my side, focus on implementation. Do what you're saying. It's very important. And continue to invest in the infrastructure, in education, but also in the physical infrastructure, because this is a big driver for future growth and economic growth and also stability.
Thanks very much. Before we hand over to the Minister for closing remarks, I think there's a graphic that if we can get up on the screen would be really useful to illustrate some of what the Minister is going to say. So if we can get the technology to work, that would be wonderful.
شكون باش يحط الجراف هذا؟ وين؟ يتبع فينا؟ ها كلم فيه بالعربي. الو؟ حط لنا الجراف بالعربي. Technology glitch. I can't see it. Talking about race. That's Korea, South Korea versus Tunisia. Going back to, I'd say, the 70s. So that's Tunisia in red and South Korea in blue with some bumps along the road. It has not been a straight line in terms of South Korea's development. They're now at roughly $1.5 trillion. We are at roughly $35 billion. Now, this is a very positive chart. So we need to be obviously taking a positive view on this chart in terms of the potential, because I've heard the words race and think of the future. This is what this chart sums up. If you go back to the 70s, we were way ahead of South Korea on a number of things. The younger people in this room won't know what I'm talking about. I do remember, because I was born in the 60s, and I know how Tunisia was in the 70s. I know things such as La Loi 72, Law of 72, which was the game changer for our industry, for our economy. And at that time in the 70s, we had institutions just like Agence de Promotion de l'Industrie et de l'Innovation and other institutions since the 70s have built Tunisia to where it is today. And in the 70s, our friends from South Korea were actually quite keen on technical cooperation on a number of things. Now what happens afterwards is that they did really grow much, much faster than us, because each year that you grow at 10% or so, just like China did, it makes a difference versus a country that grows at 3 or 4%. And this chart, I think, for me, is crucial to everyone I talk to today about where Tunisia is heading in the next 10, 20 years. They've done it in about 40 years. We can do it in about 20 years. But that obviously needs commitment, it needs hard work, and it needs also partnership. Just like what used to be referred to as third world countries and less developed countries, we don't use not so politically correct words today, we talk about emerging markets. Tunisia today has all the ingredients actually to do a lot more. And in the 70s, South Korea started from a lower base. We are at a much stronger base today in terms of where we can take Tunisia forward. We talked about all the reasons for why Tunisia is the place to be for investors. Because at the end of the day, economic growth is about investment. It doesn't happen just like that with a magic wand. And investment is local and international. It needs financing from international financial institutions. And that requires, obviously, patience. And I do say this because the last 8 years have been far from easy. This is why I said coming to Tunisia and seeing for yourself is very important. Tunisia is still standing. Many countries would be on their backs, on their knees, given what's happened in the last 8 years with internal and external challenges. Not the least, Europe, the EU, our main economic partner, has had major challenges in the last 10 years. And Europe today is trying to grow at barely just above 1%, which is not great for us because 3/4 of our trade is with Europe. 3/4 of our exports are with the EU and Europe. Hence the opportunity to diversify, obviously, our economic partnership south with Africa, 1.2 billion people today, 2.5 billion in 30 years. 30 years go fast. That's why, again, the opportunity for a number of companies to be based in Tunisia to tap into the African continent, going to 2.5 billion. Today, as I said, we are already in the middle of the heart of 2.5 billion people. We're trilingual, it helps. We are fluent in English, French, and Arabic, and many of us speak Italian also, so that helps. In terms of relationships, on a le capital confiance, as we say, with a number of countries, and that helps. A number of our companies today have started in Tunisia. They've become regional champions, and they become now continental champions, and many of them are going international. I have used the example of Vermeeg last night in the national event of the United Kingdom embassy. say good morning to Your Excellency, Ambassador of the United Kingdom. And I talked about Vermeeg, which acquired a major company in the technology space in London, London listed, Lombard risk. So it goes both ways. This is to say that we have also obviously the know-how to build on where Tunisia is today at all levels, all sectors combined. But the game changer has got to be investors, has got to be investment. So investing in Tunisia is about making an impact effectively at all levels. Economic impact, but also social impact. The democratic world, given that we are the latest kid on the democratic bloc, has a vested interest to stand by Tunisia. The EU, the US, everyone has got a vested interest in making sure that there is prosperity here, and therefore prosperity for the whole region. And this is why Tunisia should be the example to follow for countries that has transitioned towards democracy. We've seen it in Eastern and Central Europe, but Eastern and Central Europe, I've seen how they've done it from '89 with the fall of the Berlin Wall. They haven't done it on their own, with all due respect to everyone. The EU did come with its full weight. Countries like Hungary and Poland, next to Germany, the strong economy. So that's what we also tell our partners, the banks, the countries, and everyone else. If we stand all together, and it doesn't make a huge difference actually for any country with 1 or 2 billion, but $3 billion for Tunisia is 10% of its economy. $6 billion is 20%. And this is the kind of numbers we're talking about, especially when we know that economies of Europe, we're talking about nearly $20 trillion combined, same thing for the US. This is why money talks. Money talks in terms of grants, they're always welcome. Grants are nice because they don't cost much. Loans are expensive, and we've borrowed enough already, which is why investment is what would make a difference in terms of creating jobs, and that's sustainable. And the likes, we have to really thank and value the work done by the Yazakis of this world, but also Opalia and others that take the risk. Investment is about taking risk. And for those who understand the concept of risk taking, there's a risk premium. And today, for those who understand the cost of entry into any country, whether it's stock market or direct investment, the cost of entry today in Tunisia is very cheap, given the feeling that it's a distressed asset type of situation. So if you take a long-term view, and that's what investors do, it's a very cheap entry cost in dollars or in euros. And the competitiveness also, when you visit companies like Leoni, which is in the space of Yazaki and others, you see zero-fault policy in their plans. Zero-fault policy, reflecting the fact that, just like the Drexel-Myers of this world have told us, Tunisia is the best cost proposition, not the lowest cost. It's the best cost proposition because the quality is there, but at much lower competitive advantage in terms of cost and in terms of also skill and labor. So these are the kind of general messages I wanted also to convey before concluding, because this is a very important event for us also in terms of, I think, given the image that Tunisia should get here, but also going and we're being very, very proactive in terms of taking the message around the world. Obviously, there is a Minister of Foreign Affairs, there's a Minister of International Cooperation, but each minister plays their role. Everyone is an ambassador. Companies like Opalia is an ambassador, is the best ambassador, but Yazaki to Tunisia could be the best ambassador. In terms of what Tunisia is also doing is moving towards the Industry 4.0, the smart industry is another thing that we're pushing forward, because if you don't move forward, you go backwards. Everything is relative. So we also have a strategic plan for Industry 4.0, and it's coming along with companies like Yazaki and others, but us as a government also, we're pushing a lot for smart industry and Industry 4.0 to boost our competitiveness and competitive advantage. And this is why I think in the end we must be optimistic about the future of Tunisia at all levels. There's a lot of productivity gains to gain also. This is something we didn't talk enough about in terms of bureaucracy and everything else. Yes, productivity has collapsed effectively in the last 8 years, but that's part of the transition towards democracy and change. But there's an upside, so we can boost our also growth through productivity gains in the public sector, but also on the private sector. Definitely there's more to do, and boosting sectors that have been kind of neglected, just like the energy and mining sectors. They've taken a bit of a back seat with lack of investment, with falling in production. We are giving them now another look. We're pushing forward. We had a national dialogue on energy and mining and extractive industries about 3 weeks ago, and it's again top of our priorities. It used to account for nearly 10% of our economy. Today it's only 4%. So again, plenty of room for expansion in terms of what these sectors can do. and obviously renewable energy goes along what the whole world is doing, going more green. I was in Lisbon last week in the Africa Energy Forum to talk about the energy sector in Tunisia. A huge investment potential in energy in general and mining, but also renewable energy. And our aim is to go towards 30% of our electricity mix in renewable energy in about 10 years' time. We can do a lot more than that. And if you talk to many Tunisians today, you would hear 3 words: environment, social, and governance issues. These were alien concepts 10 years ago. Today, corporate social responsibility, environmental, social, and governance issues are talked about as mainstream. And this is what makes a difference also to the sustainability of our economy. And this is why I go back and say investing in Tunisia is about impact investing. It's about making an impact on all levels, socially, but economically too. And therefore, those who are here in Tunisia, enjoy yourselves in whatever hotel you're at, enjoy yourselves, mix business with pleasure, but also eventually invest. Thank you.
A fantastic summary to end from the Minister. Thank you to all the panelists that have participated this morning. I think if you remember, the objective of the session was to be able to paint the success that Tunisia is having through some new voices and new experiences to be able to share for a wider investment community, but also to start to think about what some of the challenges are that we collectively can address to ensure that Tunisia continues to welcome the investment that the Minister has spoken so passionately about, not just for today, but for the future. And drawing on those things like the impact of the investment that can be had here in Tunisia is so important for the businesses and investors of today. So thank you so much for your time and for starting the day in such a wonderful way. The next panel will be the opportunity to hear some young, dynamic entrepreneurs from Tunisia, which will draw, I'm sure, on some of the things that this panel has talked about. And then we'll have an opportunity later in the day to hear about some more of the challenges. So thank you so much, and thank you for listening.